Good afternoon and welcome to another exciting episode of Kingston Coffee and Conversation. Today I have a special guest with me to talk about some exciting happenings in Kingston, and it's Leslie-Ann McGee. Welcome, Leslie.
Hi, Bob.
And thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Please join me in a cup of coffee.
I sure will.
As we discuss what's going on.
Cheers.
Cheers. So, before we get into some of the things that you're doing, I just want to get a little background of how you ended up in Kingston, what your background is, where you came from, your job, and it gives the people a little sense of who you are.
Sure. I grew up in Cohasset, born and bred, townie, I guess you would call me. Left to go to the University of Colorado at Boulder, met my husband, Dan Shropshire there, and got an undergraduate degree in physical geography and biology, and then left to go to Duke University's Nicholas School of the Environment, where I earned a master's degree in environmental management with a focus on fisheries science and policy. And we lived in LA for a few years. My husband was in the aerospace industry, and I worked for NOAA doing fisheries management. And we moved back east in 1998, and we're looking for a place to live. And we knew we were both going to be working in the city, so we kept moving a little further south because of the train. And so we moved to Kingston in 1998, largely because of the fact that there was a train available to get us into the city then. The Greenbush line wasn't restored at that point. And we moved into a great little neighborhood off of Grove Street called Foxworth and lived there for 12 years and really enjoyed our time there in our cluster zone development. Mm-hmm. And about 5 or 6 years ago, we moved across town over to Green Street, across the street from the library, and we've been there. And one of the reasons we stayed in Kingston, we moved across town, is because we've been wonderful people in Kingston. We have 2 children. Coyle is 16, sophomore at Silver Lake Regional High School, and Holden, who's 13, is in 7th grade at Bay Farm Montessori Academy. And we love the people. We had good friends. We felt the community was a really great mix of different types of people, different types of folks on the socioeconomic ladder. Coastal community, always wanted to have to stay in a coastal community because I'm a marine scientist. And currently I work half-time at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute in Woods Hole, managing the Center for the Marine Robotics. We build underwater AUV systems, or autonomous underwater vehicles, to explore the undersea area, to help the defense industry do some of their work. And I also own my own consulting firm. So the other half of my time, I own a consulting firm called Full Sail Consulting, and I do program management, organizational assessment work, mostly in the marine science field, marine science organizations and nonprofits. So I'm able to work out of the house, which is great, be around for the teenagers, which is really important.
It is.
And my husband has since switched from the aerospace industry to the undersea system area as well. He works in Falmouth at Teledyne Benthos, building undersea systems. So we're in the sort of marine science, marine technology cluster, which is great. So it's a little bit about me.
Must be an exciting choice of career.
It's been a really interesting choice of career because you go to school for something and you think that's what you're going to work on, and over time you find what your strengths are and you focus a little bit more in your career on those strengths. And for me, it's been people management, program management, strategic planning, and I just have continued to choose to do that in the ocean and coastal science fields. I had the wonderful opportunity to be the Coastal Zone Management Director in Massachusetts for a couple of years, which was wonderful. I got to support the over 1,500 miles of coastlines and the projects that were going on therein. And I also had an opportunity to run a research reserve in Falmouth, the National Estuarine Research Reserve at Wacoit Bay, which is a living laboratory. It has a stewardship program and a research program and an education program. And so that was really great to kind of be able to to merge my interests. And then, as sometimes when you move up the ranks, you get into doing different things, and program management has been something that I found that I'm pretty good at. So.
Yeah.
Wow. And apparently giving presentations, because people ask me to give presentations a lot.
Well, I know you've come before the Board of Selectmen a number of times, and everybody is very complimentary of your presentations.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I think that's why other committees want to get you on their committees. But you sound like you're very busy when you talk about that, and having children and a dog.
And a dog, yeah.
But you're drawn into giving back to the community too. So
Yeah.
why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
What brought you into becoming a volunteer on the community?
So for me, I grew up in Cohasset, which most people think of now as a very affluent coastal community, and it certainly is. But when I grew up, my family were Italian immigrants. My mother's side of the family came from Italy, my grandparents and my great-grandparents, and when they moved to town, they became fruit peddlers, gardeners to some of the estates, and fishermen, lobstermen, tunamen. And so for us, I grew up in a sort of a very blue-collar community. My father worked for the phone company. My mother was in politics for a long time.
Really?
Yes,
Was she ever a selectman?
She ran the FinCom for a long time.
Did she really? Yeah.
But she worked for a state rep, Phil Johnston, in the sub-basement of the State House. And I remember as a kid, I used to roller skate up and down the hallways in the sub-basement of and not inline skating because they didn't have those then, but the actual four-wheeled roller skates. And then he moved up to be Secretary of Health and Human Services, and she became his HR director. And then she went on to work for the Governor Dukakis as doing all of their boards and appointments as the governor's personnel office manager. And so she was always running a campaign. We were asked to leaflet when I was a kid. I mean, they literally used to put us in the back of the car with the hatchback open with boxes of leaflets, and they would drive us around town, and we would leaflet homes based on whatever political campaign that she was working on, with the only promise that we would get an ice cream at Brigham's when we were done.
Okay.
So, getting that public outreach, getting involved. It was very much part of my upbringing. My aunt was the janitor at the town hall. My uncle ran the tree and parks department. My aunt was the grocery store cashier. They were just around town all the time. And so giving back to a community is the very foundation of my family. My mother used to say, I don't care who you vote for, but if you don't vote, don't come home.
Really? Yeah. So it was instilled in you early on.
It was instilled in us very, very early on. Yeah. And I'm very proud to be able to do this for my community. And I've been meeting some wonderful folks, and it's been very enriching. And I would encourage people to get more involved. They don't necessarily need to run for office. You can just participate. We need more participators, more positive, productive, constructive participators, in my opinion.
So what committees have you been on?
Well, I've been supporting Kingston Youth Baseball and Softball League for a long time. I ran some of their tournaments. My daughter has since staged out of the program. I've served on the library building study committee, and that's been a really great experience. I've served on the Silver Lake Middle School council, the school council, which is different than a school committee. A school council is responsible for making sure that the educational goals in the curriculum according to the mass frameworks are happening. So with my scientific and analytical background, it's been really great to help analyze data and help them guide the directions that they're going in, think about new STEM, science, technology, education, and mathematics programs. And then I also started the OffLeash Dog Area Study Committee, which had morphed into an implementation committee. And I'm just recently joined the Adams Library Board of Trustees.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Excellent. So, and that's actually the reason you're here today, is to talk about the exciting dog park that is proposed, and it'll be before town meeting on June 11th.
Yes.
So why don't you talk about how that came to being, from the study committee into the implementation where we are now?
Sure. So interestingly enough, I was out walking my dog on the town conservation land at the Cranberry Watershed Preserve, which is behind the Silver Lake Middle School. It's a beautiful piece of property that the town owns, if anybody would love to go out and see that. And I was walking my dog, and he was off leash at the time. And I ran into the conservation agent, Maureen Thomas. She was doing some water sampling, I think. And we were chit-chatting, and she said to me, gosh, it's really great to meet your dog. And I said, yes. And then there were some children, high schoolers, middle schoolers, doing exercise on that property. They use it as a track and field jogging path for cross country. And some kids ran by, and my dog didn't do anything terrible. He just kind of was perked up and was interested. And Maureen very kindly said to me, he's supposed to be on a leash. And I said, oh gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know that. She said, yeah, on conservation land, and in fact, anywhere in town, your dog needs to be on a leash. And I said, well, how is my dog supposed to get, solid exercise? Because, dogs who are exercised are actually scientifically proven to be better, you can better manage, better behavior. And she said, yeah, that is kind of a problem. There's really no place in town that you can run your dog off leash. In fact, Kingston has one of the most restrictive leash laws in the area. Your dog is not allowed to be off leash, even on your own property, unless you're behind a fence or behind an electric fence. So it's very restrictive, and my dog, is a mountain dog and needed some exercise. So I said, geez, I think we should consider, how we can do this, and maybe not everywhere. I mean, our initial thought was, well, let's just change the bylaw for the leash law and just let dogs be off leash, which is what is occurring in Duxbury. In Duxbury, they don't have a leash law; they have a under owner control law. And that has its pros and cons. There are people who are afraid of dogs. There are dogs that aren't well behaved. The onus is on the handler or the owner to make sure that they're handling their dog appropriately when they're off leash. And that takes a lot of training, a lot of experience. And you have to really put effort into it to have your dog be under your control, under voice control.
Right.
It doesn't just happen. Dogs just don't inherently listen to you. It's kind of like my kids were toddlers; they didn't inherently listen to me.
It takes time.
It takes time. So I thought about a process that would be public and transparent and get people involved, and went to the Board of Selectmen under open public forum, which occurs every selectmen's meeting, which I think is great. You can get up for the first few minutes of the meeting and talk about anything that you want to talk about. And I truly believe in the public process. I've served in public places. I've served this Commonwealth. I've served the feds. And I think that it's important for people to get involved and use the appropriate process. So I asked the selectmen if they would consider establishing a study committee to study the idea of putting an off-leash dog park in Kingston. And they approved that, and we impaneled this wonderful group of people, and we studied the issue for, about 6 months. And we went through best management practices around the country. We evaluated dog parks around the country. We had animal control involved, so they could really put their input in as to what they wanted to see. We looked at sites around Kingston. We did an extensive GIS analysis of properties that met certain criteria, over an acre in size, not near children's playgrounds, not near residences, not in environmentally sensitive areas, and so we could sort of down select, what sites might be appropriate. We brought those, a list of those to the Board of Selectmen and said, we think this is feasible. This is why we think this is feasible. It's a well-known practice. It's supported by the MSPCA as a great use for dogs, canine recreation areas. And they converted our study committee into an implementation committee and said, okay, go study the smaller sites that you are recommending and get public input and see which sites would be the best. And we did that. We've done 2 public surveys. I've done a number of outreach to different committees, Conservation Commission Committee, Community Preservation Committee. We've been to the Open Space Committee. We've been to the Green Energy Committee to look at the different sites and get their input. And we finally down selected to a site that is on the capped landfill, which is next to the transfer station. For a number of reasons. It's not near children's playgrounds. It's pretty big. It's a piece of land that is it is fairly unusual other than a wind turbine right now, and beneficial reuse of capped landfills nationwide for parks and for dog parks is well established. You have some construction issues with it, but they're surmountable. And so now we've found a private funder to help us fund it, and we went back to the selectmen and said we would like to do it on this site, and they endorsed that site, and went to the Community Preservation Committee and said, could you help us with some match funding for our private foundation grant? And it's been a really exciting process so far.
It has. And the match grant, that's what's on the town warrant.
Correct.
For the Stanton Foundation grant.
Correct. So the private funding, which is a wonderful windfall for Kingston, is only available to towns in Massachusetts, municipalities. And it's a private foundation called the Stanton Foundation. And Mr. Stanton was the president of CVS. And in his will created a foundation to support canine welfare programs. They support design and construction of dog parks. They also support canine units in police units. And they also support a mobile canine health program. And so the private foundation will fund 100% of the design costs of a dog park. In addition, they'll fund 90% of the actual construction project funding, up to $250,000.
So, and that's phenomenal, 90%.
It
Any
is
grant,
unheard of.
usually it's anywhere from a 25 to 75% or 50-50. But to
At
get
most.
a 90%.
90%. And so when you add the 90% of the construction cost to the 100% for the design, you essentially end up with a project that's 93% funded by a private foundation. The grant is non-competitive. There are qualification criteria. And the qualification criteria are you need to design it in a way that they agree with, which means you have to have potable water for the dogs and the humans to drink, and you have to provide that. You have to provide shade or shade structures. You need to provide a surfacing that is easily maintainable. In our case, it'll be pea stone and not grass, because we don't want it to become a mud bath. Fencing, it has to be fenced in. They only fund fenced in dog parks. They don't fund off-leash dog parks that are not fenced in. The last two criteria are they have to have town support, and that has to be proven through a letter from the town administrator or a town department head that the town is on board. There's been a public process. The town agrees that this is a good benefit to the town. And then in addition to that, the town has to come up with a 10% match to the grant. So the 90% construction grant needs to be matched by a 10% grant from the town. And so what we've done is we've taken it upon ourselves to go into the community preservation committee process and applied for a recreation project to cover the 10% that we believe in estimation it would cost to implement the dog park. And through that process, which is very lengthy and very thorough, we've actually received approval from the CPC to bring our project to town meeting on June 11th for approval for that 10% match. In our case,
And how much is that 10% match?
so in our case, we've done, luckily on our implementation committee, we have a fantastic individual named Dave Colombo, who is a professional engineer. He designs solar arrays and wind turbines and actually helps do program management for city parks around the state. He's estimated that it'll cost about $245,000, $247,000 to construct this park. And that might seem like a lot of money to people. But the reason why it's so expensive in our particular case is because we're building it on top of a landfill. And when you build on top of a landfill, you have very steep restrictions. You can't dig down. You can't permeate the membrane of the landfill. So you have to build up. And everything has to sit on top of the landfill, including the fencing and the shade structures. So in our case, it'll be under the $250,000 threshold from Stanton, but it'll be about $247,000, which makes the town 10% match around $24,000, no more than $25,000. So the article on town warrant, Article 29, will be for $24,773, or up to that. When we go into design process, which the foundation will fund at 100%, and if we design the park with a professional designer and we find that the cost will be less, then the match money will be less. So say we go in and we design it such that it's $180,000. Well, the match that we'll need from the town becomes $18,000. So it could be less. It won't go up, but it will.
So that's
it will
a
be
maximum
less.
that
Absolute
the town will
maximum.
be subject to
That's
through
right.
the CPC.
Yes, and in addition, we've also established a Friends of Kingston dog group.
Okay, and because before you get into that, I just want to say that there's a lot of support. It's a lot of support for this, and a lot of supporters of this. Yet there's some detractors and some who do not support it. And one of the issues that comes up from those people is who's going to pay to maintain it?
That's
who's
right.
going to take care of it? Are we putting stress on already overworked town workers, or there's going to be costs associated to removal of trash and, and other things? So how did the committee come up with taking care of that issue?
So the committee in the implementation report suggested one of two avenues, which didn't end up going forward. The two avenues that we selected were either a fee for the use of the dog park, an annual fee, which is very much established in other parks around the country, or to increase the dog license from $10, which was established in 2006, to $15, and to use that extra $5 to fund the ongoing maintenance and operations of the dog park. Well, anytime you charge a fee, you increase your liability. So we decided, the committee and the Board of Selectmen decided that that increase in liability was not palatable. So instead what we've done is we've created a friends group called Friends of Kingston Dogs, and we've researched friends groups all around the state and nationwide to figure out how they operate, how they generate money, how much does it actually cost to maintain a dog park per year. So we believe that it'll cost anywhere between $3,000 and $5,000 to maintain a dog park, and it'll likely be less than that. That's dog mitts, doggy bags, emptying the trash, shoveling a little bit of snow, things of that nature. And then in addition to that, we know that over time we're going to need some capital repair and improvement. Luckily, in our case, the Stanton Foundation actually covers the first 5 years of capital repair and improvements. A fence breaks. We need another shade structure. Oh, that bench isn't really holding up very well. Oh, we have one bubbler. We need two. Mm-hmm. And and that'll be a cost of 5% of the construction cost, which is about $37,000 over 5 years that we'll be able to get from the foundation to do that. But for the ongoing operations and maintenance, which is about between $3,000 and $5,000, our Friends group has been established. We've already started fundraising. And in addition, the selectmen, because they knew they wanted to give us a leg up to be successful, has put on annual town meeting warrant Article 30, which is $3,000 in free cash to support ongoing operations and maintenance in the first year of the dog park, just to get us moving.
Seed money,
just a little bit of seed money while the Friends group fundraises. But we firmly believe, and it's been well established locally, that Friends groups actually can support their dog parks. So we're not worried about it. I mean, we have work to do, but our committee doesn't shy away from work. Okay. But we're committed, and we know that we have a job to do, and we'll do it.
Okay, so people will see that I wore my tie today with the dogs on it, and I see that you're wearing a shirt. Is that one of the fundraisers that you're having?
Yes. So we've started out very small with our fundraiser. So interestingly, we did in our survey, we asked folks what they thought they'd like to name this dog park, and we all decided that we were going to name it the Boneyard. So, which is somewhat ironic on the landfill because you can't really dig your bones down. But that being said, okay. We're very excited. So it's affectionately called the Boneyard, and we're selling T-shirts for $15 at Rockland Trust. Rockland Trust in Kingston has just been a great supporter of us. They're a very dog-friendly place. They welcome you to bring in your dog when you're doing your banking. Stop by our table, read about the article, read about our fundraising, read about the dog park, and the shirts are $15. And then in addition, for your car, Bob, we're also selling car magnets, not bumper stickers, but car magnets for $10. And our first batch of T-shirts sold out in 48 hours.
Really? How many were that?
25 sold in 48 hours, which is pretty good considering
They're nice looking, the color, and I like the...
We have been very lucky. There's a woman in town named Christine Ward, and she's a graphic designer, and she's donated her services to help us develop our logo and look, which is great. Yeah. There are the town clerk's office estimates about 2,000 dogs in town will be registered permitted dogs this year. 2,000 dogs. That's 2,000 households. Most households have one dog. Some have two. Some have three. Some have one more. Then beyond that, it becomes a different situation. But there is a lot of interest in a place where dogs can go and recreate safely, get their energy out, and then we have ours here, and we brought our dog today.
So why don't we introduce Tanner? Come here, Tanner. Come here.
We'll introduce Tanner with a hot dog.
With a hot dog.
Want a hot dog?
Oh yeah, that brings him up. So this is Tanner, my second special guest for today, and Tanner. Tell us, how old are you? Ruff, ruff. How old is Tanner?
Tanner is a 3-year-old Bernese Mountain Dog. He weighs 125 pounds. He is permitted in the town of Kingston, and he is looking forward to exercising with his other canine friends. He's very excited to be here. I'm sorry you can only see the back of him. Maybe we should turn him around.
Come over here.
There you go. Go see Bob. Here, I'll give Bob a hot dog for you.
Sit. Good boy. Good boy. Come here. All right.
Yeah. So Tanner is a very lovable, social dog. He's he's gotten appropriate training, which I would recommend that every dog do.
He's become a star here too.
He is becoming a star here, and to be honest, he's a wonderful pet to us, but he also is a member of our family, and we treat him as such. And he needs a place to play. And not to knock our kids' playgrounds, because our kids definitely need playgrounds, but our dogs need playgrounds too, and they need to be able to socialize. So we've been working very, very closely with Animal Control. Deb Mueller and Joe Boudreau, who are just wonderful additions to our community. have been working both on our study committee and on our implementation committee to help us develop a plan for a dog park that'll work. We have appropriate rules that are best management practice around the country. We're only going to allow dogs into the dog park that can prove that they have a license and that they are have all their immunizations and their rabies shots. We'll be implementing a lanyard system that the owner or the handler has to wear when they're in the park, so you can clearly recognize that your dog is supposed to be there, your dog has got its shots, it's permitted. And we'll be working with the town clerk's office to implement that program as we go forward.
And who's going to monitor that?
So interestingly enough, most dog parks are self-policed. And we've been listening to stories for dog parks, all around the region on how they've been implementing. Falmouth, for instance, has a dog park that is fairly new, 5 or 6 years old. And unfortunately for them, the Stanton Foundation grant wasn't around when they went to build their dog park. But they've had some really positive aspects to their dog park. It's self-policed by their friends group and their volunteers. Luckily for us, we're right adjacent to the transfer station, so emptying trash won't be a big issue for us. But they've noticed that, at Falmouth, they've noticed that there are really interesting groups that have formed and visit the dog park on a regular basis. So traditionally you might think a person with a dog brings their dog to the dog park and the dog runs around and plays, period. What they found in Falmouth is it's become a gathering place in the community. There's a group of retired men who come every day and they drink their coffee together and they talk and they watch the dogs play. There's a group of autistic children that one of the schools brings down to see the interaction of the dogs to get some sensory input, which has been great. So it's just been wonderful that it's a place where people can go to experience and meet up and get that input that they might not get. There's also been an interesting group of retired folks who don't have dogs anymore or can't have dogs anymore who come to the dog park to interact with the dogs there.
That's nice.
So we hope that it'll be a community place for people that don't have kids and maybe but have a dog or don't have a dog and want to play with a dog to come and visit.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
So we would welcome everybody's support on June 11th for Articles 29 and 30. We'd love for you to join our friends group, Friends of Kingston Dogs. We have a Facebook page, so find us, Friends of Kingston Dogs. And we also have a new website called kingstondogs.org. Okay,
excellent. Okay, Leslie, I want to thank you for coming in, Leslie-Ann, and sharing this information. It has been very exciting. It's an exciting process and an exciting program that's coming out of this. And again, I know a lot of people are supporting this. So I hope you do come to town meeting and vote for this, for the group that's put a lot of time and effort into this.
Bob, we have a present for you.
You do?
And it's under the $50 government employee threshold. We would like to present to you your very own Boneyard shirt.
Now, why is it so big?
Sorry.
Thank you.
I guesstimated. So we want to thank you,
awesome. Thank you
and the Board of Selectmen for trusting in us and letting us do our process. And
no,
so
this
does
is
Tanner.
mine. Okay, well, thank you for joining us today. And until our next cup of coffee, I'm Bob Fennessy, and we'll see you again. Thank you. Thank you.